If you're a Michigan fan that's been bellyaching about recruiting and lamenting the lack of commitment at this point, I'm not just here to calm your nerves. I'm here to give you a full-on punch in the gut. We're going to get into it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Nearly forgot what I was saying there in the middle of a sentence I say almost every day. Thank you to all of those of you who are our everydayers and to everyone who makes this your first listen. Truly appreciate it. So there's a lot of lamentation on the message boards about Michigan recruiting. I've heard it from people I've gotten texts from people say, is it time to panic? Is it time to worry? So first off, I'm going to compare where Michigan is right now this year compared to where it has tended to be. We go all the way back to even before this podcast started, because we've done this show almost every year, just about almost, except for 1 year we didn't, essentially. I'm going to tell you again why, in segment 2, why you are going to need to just relax, because there's a good reason. I'm going to kind of hide it for a second, but essentially why you need to relax about it. And then thirdly, who are the commitments that Michigan got late? It's going to read a little bit different than you might think. So let's start off with the year-by-year comparison. It is May 20th, 2025. So using that metric, I went through from the 2025 class, which was on the clock last year. So we're talking this time last year, and went through and looked to see how many commitments did Michigan have May 20th, 2024, 2023, 22, 21, so on forth, back to 2017, a full year and a half before this podcast launched. Well, I was still in the industry, but was not doing a daily podcast. And there were two classes that were exceptions to the rule, whereas Michigan had bigger classes, and only once had the class pretty much, was it at an inflection point where it had as many commitments at this point as it would get for the rest of the cycle. Okay, we've talked about 2024, and that one even still was backloaded ultimately, and actually in large part because they lost several commitments. The Smith twins, who ended up going to Kentucky, two edge rushers who went to Miami, right? They lost a lot of those guys. But at this point last year, for those of you who are freaking out about all of this, that are sitting there like, oh, something's wrong, everything's going haywire, should we be freaking out? I am going to go ahead and freak out, and you look at any of the message boards. I'm going to use the Wolverine as that's my home main message board that I go on. I also go on Maize and Blue Review quite a bit. During the season, I go on MGO Blog, and then obviously I'm on Twitter, and I've seen comments on pretty much all of those. And at this time last year, you want to guess how many commitments Michigan had out of the 24 pledges that they ended up having in the class? They had 20. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't have 20. They had 3. Now they got 6 right now because they got Matt Ludwig, who is a 4-star tight end that committed today. Michigan has 6 commitments right now. This time last year, Michigan had 3. Bobby Kanka, Avery Gash, Eli Owens. After that, because they got 24 commitments in the class, they got 21 after May 20th. We've talked about the 2024 class, which was a little bit more front-loaded. They really were able to hit the recruiting trail a little bit harder, right? Going into what was going to be the national champion. Do I have that right? Not the national championship season. Not. I'm misconstruing that. Anyway, they had 12 commits in the 2024 class. Yeah, the national championship season. Yeah, because Jaden Davis was 2024. I was just confusing myself with what years, because I'm like, but I saw him at the Rose Bowl. They had 12, but then they had 15 after, right? That was the class that felt like, oh man, this class is off to a great start. It didn't finish well, right? Like that's when you look at like a USC that's got like 58 commitments right now, and you're like, May 20th, right? Some of these guys are going to go elsewhere. They're going to decommit from the class. You're starting to see that already. In 2023, at this point, they had 3, just like this year. They finished with 16 commitments afterwards. In 2022, they had 4. They finished with 18 afterwards. The only class, the only one that had an even, like, using this as the median, May 20th, that they had more in advance and then got just the same after, not more, but just the same, was 2021. What could have happened in 2020 that made it so that the recruitments were different? I wonder. On top of that, so they had 11 and then they had 11. But part of that too was that JJ McCarthy, part of the 2021 class, had committed all the way back in May of 2019. So he was a vocal leader, a 5-star. You know, he was able to, really helped build that class. So that one was the one where everything kind of held, right? 2020, so we're talking 2019. That's what the first recruiting class that we covered on this show as a whole. Not completely, but as a whole. They had 2 commitments. Remember, this was 2019's on the clock, right? They signed before COVID actually happened. 2 commitments in 2020 and by May 20th, and 22 after. And then 2019, 8 and 16, and 2018, 9 and 12. There's a reason why we do this show all the time, is because this is how Michigan goes. Michigan gets most of its commitments later as they have their official visits and things of that nature. And I understand you're looking at like, oh man, Ohio State and USC and these other schools, they're doing really well. I would urge you more so to think about who is Michigan targeting and are they off the board? There are some that are off the board now. Last time we talked about this, that, Jackson Cantwell looked like he was looked like Michigan was going to play NIL there. And Miami said, we're going to go ahead and Vice City this whole scenario. So there were some of those guys are off the board, right? Victor Singleton came off the board relatively early. Went to Illinois initially and then flipped to Texas A&M. So with that said, Michigan's in a great spot. I'm going to tell you, we're going to go down a list. We're going to talk about some of them individually, about those recruitments that are still very much open. They haven't committed anywhere. And when you start hearing these names and you're like, oh yeah, I feel good about that guy. Oh yeah, I feel good about that guy. All of that, then you're going to sit there and you're going to think, you know what? This maybe isn't as big of a deal as I thought it was. And then even more so when we get to segment 3, when we start talking about who committed, I just did it during the season, right? Commitments in a certain cycle that didn't commit to Michigan until the season itself was underway. And then some of the names you're going to be like, I don't even remember that guy. But then there's others you're going to be like, oh. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that here. Just a moment. But before we do, the NBA playoffs are in full swing and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. There's so many moments that you're going to want to bet on. And here's the thing. You can track trends. How's that going to help you build your next bet? And if you combine live prop bets mid-game and you watch how the action unfolds, you can do a heck of a lot better. And think about this. How could $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement of using that first $5 bet? I'm going to tell you, it adds a lot, because then you're playing literally with house money. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you will get, as I said, $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I hope that everyone that's flipping out, I thought about going back. This would take way too much effort to find these shows from and I don't have the video for everything, right? We only started doing video in 2021, but we've been doing this show since 2019. We've been doing this exact same show since 2019. Maybe not with this specificity, not with the before and after, But we've done the show constantly of like, hey, y'all who freaked out before, how did it go? How did the class finish? Well, it ended up being a top 10 class. I mean, there have been some that haven't been, right? But for the most part, Michigan's been in or around the top 10. Most part. 2018 class, it's funny. That was the one that was like the worst outside of 2022. And that's the class that did the best, right? 2018 class had 9 at this point, only 3 more than Michigan currently has. Yes, one of them was Aiden Hutchinson. He was an earlier commit. So looking, though, at the targets that Michigan is after, the main ones that they're after. Now, I'm partially using my own knowledge, partially using the 24/7 sports board with some of the ones that are marked warm. I'm trusting, since I don't cover recruiting on the daily, especially now that agents and all of them are involved. Everything's way more convoluted. You're going through the list, and I'm like, hey, I know that name. Hey, I know that name. Hey, that guy's got Michigan in his top group. Might be a top 10, might be top 4, might be top 2. So you look at this. I'm gonna read you some names, and then we're gonna react to some of them. Of the 5 stars that Michigan is still in it with, who have not committed somewhere else: Felix Ojo, Darius Gray, Savion Hyder, Trenton Henderson, Carter Meadows. Those are the 5 stars. Now, I think Michigan will probably end up, I don't know necessarily if they'll end up with 3, right? And Kelvin Obot, you can include in that. He's a 4-star on some and 5-star on others. And that's kind of how it goes with these, right? Having the multiple recruiting services. Michigan, I think it will end up with Savion Hyder. It's got some work to do, obviously, right? Because he's not committed yet. I think it will probably end up with Carter Meadows at this point. John Turntine, who's, I think, a 5-star on some. I could, and, again, some guys could finish higher. And then Kelvin Obot. Like, I think they're in great shape with all of those guys. And then there's some kind of varying intel. And keeping in mind, a lot of these guys, if not all of them, are making their official visits. That's when Michigan can really make a move, especially just like that is when Michigan tends to really put on the harder sell, right? A lot of players that you're sitting there, now 5 stars tend to not make their decisions till later anyway. Tend to not. I mean, some of them do, right? Hence, Jackson Cantwell has made his decision. Some of them do. And sometimes they do, and they end up somewhere else. I can't think of anyone who's like that. I don't know. There seems like there was someone who had committed to a school in January and ended up somewhere else by the time he signed. It's not really ringing any bells. It's not. Then you look at some of the other names. I'm going to read off a bunch of the 4 stars. Celeste Moa, John Turntine, who I just mentioned, Leo Delaney, who Bryce Merritt just said on the Saturday show he expects to end up in the class for sure. Braden Rouse, Cass Texo, and CJ Sadler, Titan Davis. I've just mentioned Kelvin Obot, Julian Walker, Carter Scruggs, Travis Johnson's another name that Bryce mentioned, the wide receiver. Malachi Lee's another one he mentioned. Grant Newsome. I wonder if you're Grant Newsome, do you love or do you hate being the offensive line coach, trying to get a guy from Hawaii? Because I guess it depends on how long do you get to stay in Hawaii. I don't like flying. I'm ruining the idea of having to go to USC during the season. I'm ruining the idea of having to go to Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas. This guy, Grant Newsome, has made multiple 10-hour flights to Hawaii just in the last couple of months. But then Malachi Lee's made multiple 10-hour trips to Ann Arbor. That's happened. Chase Calicut, who that one's a little bit more in flux. Michigan was in really good shape, and now he's changed his official visits from June 20th, Victor's weekend, to June 13th. That doesn't help. But it's a Michigan-Texas battle there, pretty much. Messiah Hampton, Jackson Ford, Nick Abrams, Craig Tutt, Zayden Krempin, who's one I've been paying close attention to, and DJ Forkpaw. Again, a lot of these guys, if not all of them, pretty much are all taking official visits. I don't have the list of all the official visits in front of me. It's changed since I've put it up on my site when I kind of tracked that. And obviously, some guys that are listed there are not taking their official visits because they have committed elsewhere. And then you still got the 3 stars. Donovan Webb, Amari Latimer, the running back who's a priority. Michigan's going to take 2 running backs. I missed a couple 4 stars. Mason Bonner, the other tight end, and as well as Ian Premer, the 4-star. Michigan's probably going to get one of the two of those. Ian Premer is still taking an official visit. Mason Bonner is as well. Kari Adams, Samuel Roseborough, right? Like, there's so many names I just mentioned. Michigan's in the top group for all of them. Now, will Michigan end up with all of them? No. Will Michigan end up with some guys that aren't on this list? Yes. Will you be fine with it? We'll see. Because a lot of the times you sit there and you think, like, if we don't get half of that list that I just mentioned, right? They got 6 guys. I'm looking at a list here of what? 30? So obviously you want to get a little more than half of that to fill out the class. Get up to about 22 to 25, right? You're going to sit there and you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, oh, we need to get half of that list. If we don't get half that list, then everything is sunk. We're going to be in a bad spot. But at the same time, how many times every single year are there names that are suddenly end up, and we can go through this with the guys they ended up getting late during the season, that you're like, I was not thinking of that guy at all at this time back in May, right? Like, that happens every single year where it's like you're not even really thinking or hearing of a guy. A lot of times, even in November, you're not thinking you're hearing of a guy, and then all of a sudden, a Lugard Adekpayi ends up in your lap, right? Like, that happens every year. Sometimes they don't work out, a Carmelo English type, a Darius Clemens type, but they end up joining the class. This time last year, we were not talking about one of the guys that's been talked about all spring, Jamar Browder, who coincidentally committed during the season, late in the season. So let's get to the late pushes, and we'll do that here in just a moment. I don't know if it's a lack of control that you feel as if you're a fan, that you feel like you want to feel like Michigan's in control of the situation. Again, I just want to remind you, the 2024 class felt awesome at this time. And you're sitting there thinking, I cannot wait to see Elias Rudolph lined up on one side and Collins Achiampong. I can't remember how to say his name. Achiampong. I can't wait to see those two guys lined up on the outside. Oh, or they're going to be platooning with the Smith brothers. Guess who did not end up in the class whatsoever? Some of the names that we can read are going to be names that were added late. So this is a list of players, and we're gonna go through it, and then I'm going to go back and do a little bit of an exercise. We're just going back to the 2022 class. We're not going all the way back to 2021. We're going just back to the 2022 class. So 2025 through 2022. This is the list of players that committed to Michigan. Again, some of them are going to be like, who? In some, you're just going to be like, oh, got me there. Guys who committed once the season had started, just to let you know, the whole summer, letting that whole summer, all the official visits, all of those pushes, all of those things, right? Because I think about the 2020 class, right? The one that was 11 and 11. And I'm thinking 2019, they had 11 guys already, and then they made an even bigger push. And I just remember that summer after, like, there was one day they got like 7 commitments, right? Like they got, I'm forgetting names now because they just didn't end up being consequential, but they ended up getting like AJ Henning, and they ended up getting a guy that didn't end up he ended up in Ann Arbor for a minute. Aaron Lewis. This is 2020, right? Yeah, 2020 class. I was out on a hike. Like AJ wasn't that day, but I was out on a 15-mile walk that day. And I wrote 7 articles on my phone that day from them getting commitments coming out of a visit, right? That's how it can work. That's how it can work. And it started with, I can't remember who it started with. Someone like, it wasn't Osmond Savage. It was one of those guys that didn't pan out. I think from St. Francis Academy. All right, so just this last year, like I noted, Michigan got the bulk of its class. It had 3 commitments coming into May 20th. And I'm sitting here looking, I'd have to change this to a numbered system. I'm going to do that real quick here, just to tell you, so I'm not counting here. 12 guys committed during the season last year. By ranking. Kind of not by ranking, actually, not completely. Bryce Underwood committed November 19th, 20th, one of those days. I think it was 20th, November 20th, Bryce Underwood committed. Was that in May? I mean, he, at this time, heck, it was after this time. It was like a month from now. Bryce Underwood was meeting with our friend David Cohn and our other friends who haven't been on the show, but Jake and Blaine Crane, telling them why he has no interest in Michigan. Who did you see start in the spring game? Who do you think is going to start this year? Andrew Babalola was certainly on the board, but he didn't commit until MSU week. Jordan Young committed to Clemson during the season and flipped to Michigan. Shamari Earls in the summer flipped from South Carolina, where he already was, to Georgia in the summer, right? I think it was like June or July, and then ends up flipping to Michigan in November. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng decided, and who was probably Michigan's top defensive commit in terms of target, right? That was who they really coveted. Committed on signing day, early signing period. Travis Moten, sleeper, but still. Jamar Browder, Nate Marshall, who was committed at this time, had flipped to Auburn, but then flipped again later. So he's kind of a weird one. Flipped right before signing day. Ty Haywood came after early signing day and flipped on signing day proper. Elijah Dotson, Benny Patterson, and Chase Herbstreit. All of those guys came either during or after the season was over. And then going back to the class before, really only two, Lugard Adekpayi and David Pale. They didn't get many late guys in the season, but just kind of continuing to go through names. We're just going to go through now, because now you're going to get to the guys who may or may not have seen the field. Jair Hill, one of your starters at cornerback. Carmelo English, Brandon Hillman, one of your starters at safety. Cameron Brandt, a rotational player, but who will be in that second rotation at edge. Cam Calhoun, maybe a starter at Alabama this year, unfortunately for Michigan. Nathan Afobe, maybe a starter. Trey Pierce, maybe a starter. Jason Hewlett just transferred out. DJ Waller had transferred out. Kendrick Bell, coming back from injury, absolutely can get involved in the wide receiver core. We don't talk about him because he just wasn't around all spring. Hayden Moore transferred out. Breon Ishmael transferred out. So there's a lot of transfer outs, though, including Keon Sabb, who transferred out, but certainly a star player at Alabama. Derek Moore, considered to be Michigan's best player, at least on the defensive side of the ball. Listed by PFF as the number 37 player in the country in terms of NFL draftability going into next year. Darius Clemens transferred out. Zeke Berry committed the day before the Big Ten championship game. Starter. Jimmy Rolder, considered to be a third starter at the line on the linebacking core. These next two didn't really do anything. I know, like you're going to feel really sad about this. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant committed during the season. I know, loafers, barely went out there and did anything. Alex Orji, former starter at quarterback. Marlon Klein, current starter at tight end. Amarian Walker just transferred out, and then Damani Denton, Deuce Spurlock. So when I mention this, like you're looking at some of these names. Jair Hill, Brandon Hillman, Trey Pierce, Cam Brandt, Derek Moore, Zeke Berry, Jimmy Rolder, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Alex Orji, Marlon Klein, Bryce Underwood, Andrew Babalola, Shamari Earls, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. All kinds of guys who came in very late. I'm not even talking came in during the summer. That's a whole different deal. These are guys who came in during the season. So some of these guys weren't even on your radar during their actual recruitment. No one was sitting there talking about, man, we really need to get Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant in this class. Okay? So I understand they Mason, solid 4-star by the time that he signed with Michigan, was a 3-star at the time of his commitment. Kenneth Grant was like a 3/4, right? Like you have some of that, and but I know you want like the 5 stars, right? Like I listed off 5 stars and 4 stars, and you're like, oh, these are some great names. Need to have Savion Hyder. Need to have Ian Premer. Need to have, all of these different guys. Zayton Krempin. But at the same time, understand that unless you are sitting there like in like an EJ Holland or a Aiden Sen type of role where you're just scouring, like more EJ than anybody, or Bryce Marich, where you're just scouring the talent, like you're like Aiden's in Australia, so he's not going to anything, but he's certainly like scouring film and all that kind of stuff. If you're EJ, you're going all kinds of places. If you're Bryce, you're going all kinds of places, and you're getting your eyes on players, right? And you might have a little bit of like, ooh, that guy might be a guy, right? Like I've had some of those, just even whether it was, it's more been local travel, some satellite camps, right? Like I remember identifying a guy like Maxwell Hairston and being like, telling some of the people in Michigan, like, you need this dude. And then they're like, no, we're good. And then, just goes on to become a first round draft pick, right? So like that does happen, but understand that like not everyone's going to be on the radar, right? Trey Pierce, another one I mentioned, right? Like some of these guys are going to, like, you're just going to sit there and you're going to look at some names right now. And then we're going to get into August and you're going to be saying like, ooh, kind of want that guy. And then you're going to be in November and being like, some of the guys that you were really high on, you're going to forget about. You're not going to care about. Heck, by the time Keon Sabb had committed to Michigan, like the excitement behind him was not the same because he had dropped from a 5-star to a 4-star, right? Like he committed to Michigan. Everyone's like, yeah, okay. Like things will change. There will be ebbs and flows and things will change. So I'm just telling you, if you are sitting here being like, our pets' heads are falling off. This is a terrible situation. What the heck is Michigan doing? I don't like any of this. This is ridiculous. They have 6 commitments. What the heck? I think back to my Michigan fandom, and there's been all kinds of amazing moments where I was sitting there celebrating commitments in the month of May. Well, chances are you were celebrating either guys that didn't end up on campus or a class that didn't turn out that great. The better classes ended up being filled out more, for the most part, later. 2018, the most productive class that Michigan's probably had, outside of obviously, like 28. When I say most productive, I mean like very few transfers. Most every guy really produced. At this point, had 9, just a few more, and 12 afterwards. You look at the classes that won the national championship, right? So you're looking at the 2023 class was the one who was the freshman class during the championship. So 3 by this point, 4 the year before, 11 in McCarthy's class. Do your own math. It's really not the be all end all. We do the show all the time. We're going to probably keep doing this show every year because this is just how Michigan recruits. It just is. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Wednesday. Peace.